Reinvention seems to be the name of the game in the world of superhero media. Peter Parker has been bitten by a spider more times than any of us can count. Batman's parents have taken so many trips down Crime Alley that it's almost all we know them for, and Krypton explodes like a particularly earthy firework more often than we see actual fireworks. So it makes sense to try and innovate, reinterpret and alter the existing source material to seem fresh, new, and dynamic, especially as those stories themselves grow older with the eternally dreadful passage of time. More often than not, that turns out as a bad idea, built upon something far better than whatever the new guy comes up with, like building a thatch hut atop the Empire State Building. Eventually, an errant breeze will blow it away, and nobody will remember it was ever up there except for whoever slapped it together to begin with.
And I know what the future brings. I know that when you see Madam Web, you're gonna love it. In fact, I think you're gonna see it twice.
What? No, I don't want to do that.
You're going to have a great time.
No.
You might meet some new people.
No.
Sometimes it's better to go back to what works, to look at the formula that the original creators whipped up back in the day and analyze why it managed to stick with us in the first place. Batman Caped Crusader is not that. At least, not entirely. No, Batman Caped Crusader is, first and foremost, a conversation. In May 2021, we got the announcement that a new Batman show was in the works, harkening back to the OG iteration of Gotham's Dark Knight. It would be the first animated show to feature our baddie boy since Brave and the Bold, and the crew behind the whole thing made it all look promising, at least for the most part. Bruce Timm, one of the creators of the famed and beloved Batman the Animated Series, and the front and center pioneer of the god-awful Bruce Babbs ship,
This is not how this was supposed to go!
was taking the lead on this one, with a pinky promise he learned his lesson after the Killing Joke. Joining him was Matt Reeves, the mind behind 2022's The Batman, and J.J. Abrams, the man behind Lens Flares.
Do you see it coming?
I can't see a goddamn thing.
Okay, solid. Chuck in Ed Brubaker as the head writer, and I'm about 75% on board. The cast features a lot of the classic Batman go-tos. Batman himself, voiced by Hamish Linklater, Jason Watkins as Alfred Pennyworth, and Barbara Gordon by way of Crystal Joy Brown make up who I would call the emotional core of the show. Of course, Batman being the way it is, you've also got a wide supporting cast, most of which are well built. I'll dig into that later. You've got your Jim Gordons, your Catwomans, your Harley Quinns. Aiming to recenter itself in the prime of the Golden Age, Batman Caped Crusader sets itself apart by focusing on what worked. It almost feels like the creative team sat down with the ghost of Bill Finger and met somewhere in the middle, using modern perspectives to shape and tweak while paying ample respect to Finger's original vision. Bob Kane was there too, but he just got to sit in the corner and they never really felt like it was his turn with the talking stick. Batman is shown to be very early in his career in this show, and that's evident by his emotional state. He doesn't even call Alfred by his first name. He's closed off, calculating, and tries the ultra-rich boy persona, but it never holds up in the face of anyone who spends more than a single day around him.
If I didn't know any better, I'd think you really are the shallow cardboard cutout you pretend to be. But I do know better. Your walls are just too high.
Barbara Gordon is changed to be older than prior iterations, presumably in her mid to late 20s, operating as a defense attorney. She understands the nuances of crime, how some people are trapped in it cyclically, or have now found themselves in a spot where they can turn their life around, given the right opportunity. One of the other major players is Renee Montoya, voiced by Michelle C. Bonilla. She feels almost like a stand-in for Jim Gordon, even though Jimbo himself is present, occupied with the internal conspiracies of the GCPD. She's cautious about Batman, unsure if his vigilantism will ultimately hinder the seemingly ironclad criminal underground of Gotham, or if he's just a portent of the floodgates starting to open for a whole new mess of trouble.
I know you're still listening. We're not done, you and me.
Gotham itself serves as a well-characterized backdrop to the first season, but I get a distinct feeling from it that pervades into other aspects of the show, so I'm gonna touch on that while it's relevant. Bruce Timm, of course, spearheaded the modern interpretation of Gotham that many of us carry thanks to Batman the Animated Series. That sprawling dark deco chic has since become recognizable more than any other interpretation of the city. The characters followed the same track, dressed in ways that were both historic yet of an ill-defined era. If it wasn't for the later shows that came, Justice League and Batman Beyond, I feel you could easily have tucked the series into any era from the 1940s to the literal date the episodes came out, and it would still make sense. Here, of course, they wanted to solidify it in the realm of the old, a universe where you could easily imagine a radio broadcast starting to talk about trouble overseas, and you'd instinctively know what war they're referring to. Bruce Timm himself is a human being, and being a pile of aging flesh and gray matter like the rest of us, has grown and changed and shifted in the 22-odd years since Kevin Conroy's Batman first bam biff powed Mark Hamill's Joker.
Batman! You wouldn't let me fry, would you? Batman!
I get the inescapable impression that he was given the project with the expectation from execs that he'd just make the same show a second time. Heck, that's what a lot of fans were drooling over the thought of back in 2021, but his sensibilities have changed. This isn't BTAS anymore, and that's fine. But it's weird watching this show and seeing what at times feels like echoes from 2 decades past, filtered through digital animation on a budget that should definitely be big enough to have the characters do more than a default pose while immediately after a building explosion. My point being that Gotham feels held back. It feels like Timm, and presumably others on the creative team, are gun-shy about getting too close to the 90s show, so they tap the brakes on things like Gotham's aesthetic, giving it an appearance that ultimately feels like a watered-down version of the locale. I'll compliment sandwich this, though. The characters, on the whole, are fantastic. A couple flubs here and there, and that can sometimes depend on the writing, but I genuinely enjoy the heck out of nearly all these interpretations of the classic characters. Renee and Harleen's relationship begins with subtle hints and nods before becoming more overt and then heartbreaking. Flass and Bullock's evolving and crooked dynamic is surprisingly deep considering the surface level nature of their roles, and the rivalry between Harvey Dent and Barbara feels both organic and complex.
What is she, Harvey? A campaign donor?
Oh, come on, Barbara. Do you really think I'd sink that low? Well, maybe I would.
All this puts together a show that's unique while paying respect to the original source material. The narrative of Batman Caped Crusader is mostly episodic in nature, but with linearly evolving characters and motivations. This isn't the 90s. These episodes aren't going to be fought over online about what order they're supposed to be in. 1 leads into 2, then 3. Congrats, you can count.
5!
The first episode, In Treacherous Waters, is very much built upon establishing this new world and the key players, Batman, Barbara, and so on. We get a gender-swapped incarnation of the Penguin, who got some folks turning red in the face online, to which I say, I don't like her either, but for entirely different reasons. I'm mostly gonna skim these episodes, but sometimes you can't just leave these things hanging. I don't like Oswalda Cobblepot, but specifically because she doesn't feel like the Penguin to me. The Penguin should be short, dumpy, and go, wah! This is just a tall lady in Penguin cosplay, and I found it a little half-hearted, though I loved the idea of the Iceberg Lounge being a mobile ship instead of a landlocked property.
Guess it's not a yacht party until someone falls overboard.
Uh-huh. Excuse me.
Bruce Wayne?
Guess it's not a yacht party until someone falls overboard.
And Be a Villain gives us Clayface, and they get a bit creative by steeping him in old Hollywood. He's visually and vocally evocative of old horror figures like Vincent Price and Bela Lugosi prior to his terrifying metamorphosis. He also holds a unique role in the overall narrative in the sense that he's our first indicator that Caped Crusader isn't afraid to go beyond, quote, grounded storytelling and do something weird when it feels it's appropriate.
I don't believe your performance. You're chewing on scenery, relying on makeup effects to enhance weak characterization. It's insincere, Basil. It's not real.
Kiss of the Catwoman is where I finally got hooked for 1,000,001 reasons. Just as Clayface was soaked in old Hollywood, Catwoman is head-to-toe cat-bathed in the enthusiastic camp of Adam West's era of Batman. She's got a sassy German maid, a cat-themed car, and even six a panther on bats in the third act. At the same time, the B-plot sees Bruce tackling something every fan on Reddit has been saying he should look into for the past decade: therapy, albeit court-mandated. And this is where we get Dr. Quinzel, a version of Harley wholly detached from her darlin' puddin', and thank God, I've got Joker burnout, something fierce.
Let's give the people what they want.
But this Harleen is fantastic, honestly. She's a well-utilized and engaging remodel of the old character that fits the setting and narrative exceptionally, providing well-thought-out observations about Bruce's lifestyle, his emotional walls, and she even has her own life going on outside of the therapy office. It also wasn't lost on me that this episode in particular has an introspection into Bruce's double life while introducing two major Batman characters who also live double lives.
You owe me 3 years of back pay, so I'm collecting now. My cruise to the Bahamas leaves in an hour. Auf Wiedersehen!
Why?
The Night of the Hunters wasn't half bad. It's the most reminiscent of Batman Year One out of everything we see this season, even reusing a few key bits of dialogue.
Still don't see a plan here, Montoya. So how you gonna actually catch this guy?
Well, we're gonna trap him. And we're gonna start by casting a wide net.
And I really enjoyed this show's take on Firefly.
It's Firebug.
Sorry, jeez. Plus, the relationship between Bullock and Flash gets some development. Deep down, I'm hoping to see a Bullock redemption arc in later seasons. But they show Firebug as one of the usual guys who gets locked up in Arkham, a mentally unwell human being with an unfortunate fixation on pyromania. And they actually do a good job interpreting him as a victim of his own mental illness. He wouldn't have even committed any further crimes if not for Bullock and Flash letting him loose, hoping to shake Batman out of his belfry. You know that meme? Tonight's episode, the writer's barely disguised fetish. I'm just gonna show you how long this segment goes on in The Stress of Her Regard.
I'll give it all up. I'll give everything away. Everything.
Stop.
Sorry to kink shame, but time and place, guys. Time and place.
I think we should have dinner.
Oh?
Somewhere spiffy. My treat. How's tomorrow night?
Yeah. I can make that work.
Good. Then it's a date.
Night Ride is just a Scooby-Doo episode in Batman colored paint, and I kind of love that, even though the episode could have had a bit more going for it. They make use of red herrings and some characters less frequently explored on the mystic side of the DC universe, but I think it could have used one more draft. Moving Target is a good episode that stuck with me a bit more than others, though I initially felt it was pretty middle of the road. The set pieces are memorable, it's nice to see the supporting cast get more rounded out, and I can't help but think how absolutely obnoxious it must be to work for Onomatopoeia for more than a single job.
Blip, blip, blip. Ding, 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 ding.
Shut up. Shut up!
The villain was really weak in Nocturne, but the rest of the episode makes it one of my favorites. I do think it's a bit odd, however, that nearly every person who becomes Robin in the comics, aside from Tim Drake and Damian Wayne, all come from this one orphanage run by Leslie Tompkins. I mean, at what point do you change from giving children a loving home with a billionaire to feeding orphans to Batman's meat grinder?
Hey, Dent. Here's what happens to double crossing.
The killer inside me. Let's talk about Harvey Dent for a tick. They switched Harvey around a bit with Caped Crusader, making him a scumbag before the acid splash. They play with this really quite effectively, and he never becomes a completely out-and-out bad guy. I get the feeling that the writing team didn't want to villainize a mental illness, and I respect that decision, especially given the route they decide to play it out narratively. Great episode, great Harvey Dent. I just wish they gave him a red tone on the scarred side of his face, but I think this might be another one of those times where they tried to separate themselves from Batman the Animated Series.
This is what you all want, isn't it? Well, it's your lucky night, folks! You've got front row seats to the freak show!
Savage Night, the last episode of the season, is a strong conclusion to the first chapter. It wraps up the main narrative on the off chance that season 2 is off the table, but leaves us with a cliffhanger of... Oh. No. No! We were so close!
Perfect.
Okay, so what's the takeaway? Batman Caped Crusader offers a return to the original formulas of a lot of their characters with just enough modification to call itself unique. The voice acting is hit or miss. Personally, I'm not in love with Linklater's Batman, which is a problem considering he's the titular character. The animation is under-budgeted, not Young Justice post-season 2 quality, but definitely way lower than it should be. There also isn't enough new stuff, ironically. The twists on certain characters like Quinn and Dent are good, and the relationships and new careers of other characters are equally strong, but there's almost this existing fear of having the most recognizable characters exist beyond their most essential attributes. Maybe they functioned on the thought that there would be entirely new viewers in the audience, so I can understand why they didn't go absolutely nuts with the idea. But some characters are just the bones of their personalities with little else. Batman is a stoic, edgy loner with a chip on his shoulder the size of Wisconsin who needs to learn to trust in others. Jim Gordon is a good cop who's pushing himself too hard to do what's right in a city that can only make wrong decisions. Alfred Pennyworth is a slightly sarcastic but deeply caring butler who sees Bruce not just as his employer but as his child, someone he needs to protect but doesn't quite know how to because of just how out of hand things have gotten. We've seen these about 1,000 times. I really liked it. B+ work. I'll elaborate. What I see here is the start of something very, very good, bordering on great. Everything I've mentioned as a criticism is something that can be fixed by season 2 if the creators choose to. The animation can get pepped up with a better budget, the voice acting can improve, and the characters can get more rounded out with more screen time. These are easy solutions. Hell, we can compliment the much beloved Kevin Conroy for his role as Batman back in the 92 series, but even he had growing pains.
Harvey. No.
To wrap it up, Batman Caped Crusader is the old filtered through the world of the new. The creative team clearly have a deep love for the realm of the Dark Knight and wear that love on their sleeves. They understand the appeal of putting Batman in this era, making him pick locks with basic pins instead of 007 level gadgets that do everything, and they show him putting in legwork for investigations because not everything is available to him from a magic supercomputer. While not transcendent or numinous like some people might describe the show's predecessor, it gives us the start of a new saga in the life of Gotham's hero, one that has the chance to grow and learn and bring itself to greatness. It's got heart, it's got brains, it just needs a little more courage to take it home. And that's where we'll leave our story for now. If you really enjoyed the video, hopefully enough to have left a like and subscribed, you'll be happy to know that we also have a video available here on Bob Kane, especially if you're wondering why I made that joke about him early into the video. Thanks for sticking with us. I'll see you in the next one.